Hi, I'm Cole Akers from the Glass House, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm George Smart. Nowhere in the world celebrates modernism better than Palm Springs, California. Every February, they have a huge architecture and design festival called Modernism Week. Modernism Week is a dazzling spectacle of shopping, architecture movies and premieres, martinis, parties, tours, exhibits, and opportunities to visit places like the Hotel Lautner out in Desert Hot Springs, which is a tiny 4-room hotel that is the most exquisite you'll ever see. We took our U.S. Modernist group out there one evening around sunset to see the hotel and also see the amazing facility that has grown up around it. It's quite special. If you're into mid-century modern, this is the Woodstock of all the architecture we love, an event not to be missed. And U.S. Modernist was there talking with nearly all the keynote speakers, authors, and special guests of Modernism Week.
I'm Tom Guild. I was with George this year at Palm Springs, my first time there. And aside from all the fantastic architecture and the food and the drinks, it was just a heck of a place to do people watching. At some of these parties, you just don't see people like that in North Raleigh. I'm sorry.
No. We did see a few plastic surgeries gone awry as well.
Yeah, we did. And some hairstyle nightmares, but it was worth it. It was just a lot of fun.
Support for U.S. Modernist Radio comes from Realtor Angela Roll, your special real estate agent for bringing modernist design expertise to buyers and sellers. Reach Angela at angelaroll.com. That's ROEHL. Or 919-995-0550.
You want to go with U.S. Modernist to Modernism Week in 2020? Send Mr. Modernism, George, an email at george@usmodernist.org to get more information. Today, George wraps up coverage of Modernism Week 2019 in Palm Springs. 2018 was the 100th anniversary of the birth of architect Paul Rudolph, who gained early fame through innovative modernist houses in Sarasota, Florida. Later, he created masterworks in concrete and steel in New York, New England, and especially Singapore and Hong Kong. George talks with returning guest Sarasota Architecture Foundation President Christopher Wilson, and later the lead moderator of the Paul Rudolph tribute held at Modernism Week, Dick Burkett.
So, Christopher, the last time we had a conversation, I think we had been exiled to outside the restrooms at the Ringling Museum because there was no place for us to record. And you were a very good sport about all that.
Yes.
And we had a great conversation. That was in the fall of 2015.
Yes.
And here you are again, back on the show and with us here in Palm Springs. And such an incredible amount of stuff has happened.
Yes.
With the Sarasota Architecture Foundation.
Correct.
Recently. We've got tours to talk about. We've got houses that you're showing off. We've got the Walker Guest House making its inaugural jaunt across the country to be here in Palm Springs.
Yes.
And I'm sure other things as well. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the Walker Guest House, which we call the replica.
Okay.
But it's a Walker Guest House replica.
Okay.
This is a beach house designed by Paul Rudolph in 1952. The original house is still existing it's called Sanibel Island. It's about 2 hours south of Sarasota. It's for sale right now, in case anyone wants
for about $6 million?
Yeah. Well, the whole piece of property that it's on is $6 million. There's a main house, and then this is the guest house. And so, starting probably in about 2012 or so, the Sarasota Architecture Foundation started a campaign to build a replica of this house, because it's one of the best examples of what's called, quote-unquote, the Sarasota School of Architecture, which is modern architecture adapted to the Florida climate. So, also...
there is no Sarasota school. There's no football team you can root for.
No.
Nothing formal like that.
No, it was a movement, more of a movement. And it was a movement that took modern architecture and adapted it to the Florida climate. So, for example, in this house, and also the house is very small. It's only 24 feet by 24 feet. So that's another reason why we built that one, rebuilt. So in this particular house, there's walls of screen in which there's these flaps that go up and down. You can regulate the temperature. Also, it's a small footprint, which is very efficient. And then the flaps also shade the structure. So anyway, we finally got that finished for 2015 when you came and interviewed me. We do something every year called Sarasota Mod Weekend. And so we had got it built and opened for the 2015 Sarasota Mod Weekend.
Which was great. It was a wonderful time.
That occurs every year on Veterans Day weekend. Yeah, and it was up for...
He's making that winky face to mark your calendars, folks.
That's right. It was up for 2 years on the grounds of the Ringling Museum, and it was free, because to get on the grounds of the Ringling Museum, it's free and open to the public, and then you could go inside of our replica. There were over 5,000 people who visited. And the Ringling did not want to keep it as a permanent exhibition, but that was okay because we had designed it to come apart in pieces. It went into storage, and we started looking for somewhere else to go. I won't go through the whole saga of that. It took us a while, but finally PS Modcom agreed to do that. So last August, we shipped it out here, and they had it up by October.
Good.
Yeah, it was nice. We sent out a guy to, his name is Joe King.
Joe King.
No, we didn't send out Joe King. We sent out one of Joe King's workers who knew how the whole thing fit together, and he helped them do it. And they sited it correctly in terms of north, south, east, and west, which is very important because of the way that the light comes into the house.
So out here during Modernism Week, you can visit the house.
You can.
And it'll be open afterwards?
It's here until February 2020.
Okay.
So I don't know how much it'll be open after Modernism Week. I think maybe only on the weekends, but I'm sure their website will tell you.
It's an amazing little structure. I mean, in this age of air conditioning and big houses with 10,000 square feet of space, this is an incredibly efficient little vacation house. I mean, you go in it and you go, I want one of these right now.
Yeah, we call it the original tiny house because you know the whole tiny house movement?
Oh, sure.
I'm just multiplying 24 by 24. 576 square feet. Yeah, and it's got a bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living, and dining area, all within that small footprint.
Where does it go after this?
We don't know yet. We're still in discussion. It actually might get purchased. We are offering it up for sale if anyone wants to buy it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a price on it, or?
There's a price. I'm not sure whether I can say it here, but you can get in contact with us. We'll talk to you about it.
All right. Does that include moving it, or do you have to move it yourself?
You'd have to move yourself and, take care of all the permits and everything. It just so you know, it doesn't have plumbing or major electricity. It doesn't even have I said it has a bathroom, but what it has is the space where there was the bathroom, and there's a handicap lift right now in order to be ADA compliant. So, there would be a little bit of work involved, but you would have a very nice replica of a Paul Rudolph structure.
So I guess you'd have to, with 24 feet across, you'd have to take it apart. You just couldn't put it on the back of a truck. It's too wide for a truck
Yeah,
bed.
it's probably too wide for a highway or something. But it does come apart. We can show you how to do that.
There's a manual or something?
There's not a manual, but we have Joe King. We have the author of, together with Christopher Doman, is a book called Paul Rudolph, The Florida Houses. And he's an architect, too.
Yes, he is. And I understand he has another Rudolph house in storage someplace.
He does.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about that. But.
Well, I talk about it with him, so...
Okay.
Maybe that'll come out one day.
So that's actually what's important about that house is that one is considered the origin story of the Sarasota School. It was 1941. Ralph Twitchell was the architect, and a young Paul Rudolph who had just graduated from, it was called Alabama Polytechnic at the time, but it's Auburn University. He came to work for Twitchell in Sarasota for the summer, and he kind of introduced Twitchell to modern architecture that was happening in Europe earlier. Twitchell was already kind of leaning that way. He was getting into Art Deco and more contemporary styling. But we like to say that Paul Rudolph pushed him in that direction, and then so this was a house for himself, for Ralph Twitchell. And yes, Joe King purchased it sometime in the 2000s and unfortunately couldn't fix it up totally, but he took it apart and he has it in pieces.
Well, that's a project for another day, yes.
Yeah, he wants to put it up somewhere.
Now, when I was down there last, you guys had the Sarasota Mod Weekend.
Yes.
And a few other events during the year.
Yes.
But now you guys have really gone big time in that you have, you've leased a couple of houses?
So we have two houses that are on tour on a regular basis. One of them is the Umbrella House also by Paul Rudolph, 53. It literally has an umbrella on top of it. That's why it's called the Umbrella House. And that one is just, it's owned privately, but the owners allow us to open it up once a month for tours, and the proceeds go to the SAF. And then the other one, yes, is the Cocoon House by Ralph Twitchell and Paul Rudolph, 1950. And that's a rental property. It's also very small, 22 by 35 feet. And about this time last year, we found out that it was for rent. And, we were celebrating Paul Rudolph's 100th birthday, and it was a no-brainer. We approached the owner, who we knew anyway, and we took over the lease, and we're just about to now renew that for another year. So we opened that up twice a month for tours, and we also fixed it up. So in conjunction with the local, it's a locally listed property, so in conjunction with the local historical preservation board, we cleaned it up and rebuilt the front porch and a back porch with cantilevers over the bayou. And the biggest thing that we did there was there's 420 wooden louvers on the Cocoon House, which we took off individually and stripped them of their white paint that they had on them, because originally they didn't have any white paint. They were just cypress wood.
So what do you have to cover them with something, right?
There's a linseed oil which we rub into them, and it protects the wood.
That sort of sounds like Kobe beef, where you have to massage the cows. Did you have to gently take care of each louver?
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
Well, yes. I mean, the builder originally did the scraping of the paint, or whatever, taking off the paint, but now we're starting to get our membership involved to help rub the linseed oil into the into the louvers. But, it's a labor of love.
It is a labor of love.
Yeah.
And also I know, trolley tours have exploded in Sarasota.
Well, there's another organization in town, architectural organization. They have specialized in trolley tours.
But you're doing them too.
What we have started this year is something called the Get to Know series. And what we're doing is this intense, in fact, there's one today happening in Sarasota. In fact, it's happening right now, on the architect Tim Siebert. Unfortunately, he just passed away in December. And so it's a lecture, 1-hour lecture about his career, and then you hop on a trolley, 3-hour trolley tour of as many properties as we can get to, and get inside also, not just from the outside.
We had Lori Muldowney and Harold Bubel on the show a number of months ago.
Well, Harold's doing the Siebert tour today.
Great.
And then we're going to do Gene Leedy on March 23rd. That's his work is up in Winter Haven, which is close by. And then we'll see who we do next.
That's fantastic. And I imagine these tours are super well attended.
Sold out.
Yeah.
Sold out. In fact, the one today for Tim Siebert, because he just passed away, we have a scholarship that we give away every year to an architecture student in college. And we're dedicating the scholarship this year in the memory of Tim Siebert, and the proceeds from the tour today are going into that scholarship.
It's really interesting, both in Florida and here in Palm Springs and in North Carolina. This whole generation, they're just about all gone.
Oh, yeah. So we lost Tim Siebert in December, and we lost Gene Leedy in November. And there's a famous picture of the Sarasota School of Architects in 1982, which is when the name came about. And there was a AIA conference. And it's a very famous picture. You can Google it, and there's only one person alive in that picture now. It's Victor Lundy, and he's 96. He just turned 96.
Wow.
Speaking of Victor Lundy,
yes,
there's a new monograph out on his his life and work.
Who wrote this book?
Well, there's a bunch of people who wrote it, but I wrote the chapter on his Sarasota years.
Okay.
So it's called Victor Lundy, Artist Architect, and it goes from his early life and education. He was from New York originally. He went to Harvard with Rudolph, and then came down to Sarasota after Rudolph, and he was in Sarasota from 54 to 60. And then back up to New York, and then he was in California, and then settled in Houston, and that's where he still lives.
Oh, he's in Houston now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does he come out for any of your Sarasota Mod weekends?
Let's see, 2016, we dedicated to Victor Lundy, and he came out, yeah. So he was 94 then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They live a long time, I tell you.
Well, he's an old World War II vet, so he's been through a lot.
This year's conference in November, what's going to be the theme of that?
So we kind of outdid ourselves last year. It was Paul Rudolph's 100th birthday. We had every single Rudolph property that we could possibly have open and toured, and we had our keynote speaker was Paul Goldberger.
Oh, sure.
A famous architecture critic. He did a great job summarizing Paul Rudolph and his career. So we don't think that we can top that. So we're going to take a step back a little. And the theme for this year's Sarasota Mod Weekend is Sarasota in the 60s.
Okay.
So it's just like a general theme, anything that was done in the 60s, kind of like the next generation after Rudolph and Lundy. People like Frank Folsom Smith, Jack West, Carl Abbott, who's still practicing
around
in Sarasota. So we're focusing on the 1960s. So we're going to have a film and a panel and a lecture that all focus on the 60s, and then all the trolley tours and house tours will also be things from the 60s.
Do you have the dates for that yet?
It's November 8th through the 10th.
And where can people find out more about this, Christopher?
Our website is www.saf- not underbar, but -srq.org. And SRQ is our airport code, so that's why.
Does that have a special meaning, SRQ?
No, it's just our airport code.
Sarasota Regional something?
Yeah, SAF.org was taken, so so we got SAF-SRQ.org, and you can see all the events, all the house tours that we have. We have a film series that we do if you're ever down in Sarasota. We have another series that we're doing is called Living with History, quote unquote, Living with History. And these are properties which have been mostly vintage 50s and 60s properties which have been lovingly restored. And so our first one is actually on March 31st at a Twitchell Rudolph house in Bradenton, which is the next town up. And it used to be owned by Joe King, and he fixed it up, and he's going to tell us all about it. It's a really interesting house because it was designed for a gentleman in a wheelchair. So it's like ADA compliant
before ADA was a thing.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's got like wide doorways and the shower that you can roll into and things like that. So yeah, we're busy. We're really busy.
I am really excited about what you're doing. I mean, it's tremendous. My hat's off to you.
Thank you. We get a lot of support and more each year because we're doing stuff. Our mission is to educate about and advocate for and celebrate the Sarasota's mid-century modern heritage.
Well, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. We look forward to seeing anyone at the Sarasota Mod Weekend.
Stay tuned. Up next, George chats with Dick Burkett. He was the lead moderator of this year's Paul Rudolph tribute at Modernism Week.
You've taken a real interest in Paul Rudolph in this 100th year of his birth.
Yes, indeed, I have.
And how did you fall into this passion?
Well, it was because living in 14 years in Sarasota, Florida, Paul Rudolph was the center of attraction, of course, because all of my friends were either architects, designers, or artists. So obviously being a part of that whole group, and also I had a business of architectural marble, which imports, and I sold to architects, so I hung around with all those guys. And with the Sarasota School of Architecture, many of those members, including Gene Leedy, and of course Carl Abbott, who was my designer for my home that I did on the Gulf Front on Lido Shores, also Ralph Twitchell and Tim Siebert,
who just passed away?
Yes. Jimmy Holiday. These were just, I just hung around with that group. So obviously I learned about Paul Rudolph at a very early age. And I also had friends that owned the Umbrella House at that time. So that connection stayed with me for all of these years. And when I realized that this was the 100th year anniversary, that's when I said, you know what, this makes sense to have a symposium. And that was also dovetailed in for the Palm Springs Modern Committee, which I'm on the board, to bring the Walker Guest House, which Rudolph designed, down on Sanibel Island, the replica of that house, which the Sarasota Architectural Foundation sponsored. We made an arrangement, our board with theirs, to bring the Walker out. So it was just like meant to be. It was a very natural occurrence that this all came full circle for me.
Well, the Walker Guest House is really beautiful, and you have it on display now.
Yes.
Down near the Palm Springs Museum.
Correct.
And how long will it be there about?
We have the option of having it for another year. And so, a lot depends upon the space where we have it, and if they decide to change their plans and go forward with building earlier, then that could alternate, our plans. But that's a present game plan at this point. So we're just going to be flexible how that works out.
Now, if you use Google Earth or some other mapping program and you look at the Palm Springs Museum of Art from the sky, you'll see in recent years this giant pit.
Yes.
And the house is down in the pit.
Yes.
Right now. And how do you set that up? How do you get trucks down there to unload the guest house and
right.
to put it all together? How was that done logistically?
Well, that was very interesting. First of all, we've sort of renamed the pit, which just doesn't seem quite appropriate.
It's not the art pit anymore?
To the crib.
Oh, the crib.
Yes.
Because of the giant baby statues.
Yes, exactly. So we share space with the babies, and actually they very generously moved the babies around a bit when we joined them. But how it came in was on flatbed trucks, 2 of them, and they were on pallets. And every single piece was numbered, and there was a master plan. So it was sort of like a giant puzzle or like a child's Lego game. And it came together beautifully, and we were very fortunate in that Joe King, architect in Sarasota, who is the one that was commissioned to create the replica to the exact plans of Rudolph's. He actually sent out his lead person and worked with us it was about 120 degrees some of those days, coming from Sarasota, which is hot, but they weren't used to 120. And so we took the truck as far as we could to the driveway there's a garage underneath the upper level. And so just outside the entrance to that garage, we had forklifts. And these guys were fabulous that operated those forklifts. So they would pick up the pallets, and I think there was like 2 inches to spare. It was just an amazing, very close, even though we had calculated it before, we knew it was going to be close. Then they brought them in, and they unloaded them. There was a space as an overhang down there where the sidewalk is. They unloaded them, and immediately the guys, local construction company, Stephen Shields, who very graciously helped us put it together. We had architects, 2 from Los Angeles, Corsini Stark, who helped us with the permitting that we needed to do. This was all done under the guidance of Nikki McLaughlin, the executive director for PS Modcom. There were many, many, many details that it took to get this out of Sarasota and into Palm Springs and working with the city, getting it erected. Then they put it all together, and the space got painted. And I think it took us maybe a little over 2 weeks at the most. And we got it up, and we were ready to go for fall preview of Modernism Week.
Oh, so back in October?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
So you were building over last summer?
Yes, right in the heat.
In the heat.
Exactly.
So essentially, this was not necessarily a modular construction since it was on pallets. It was really a giant jigsaw puzzle of parts you had to reassemble.
Yeah, but it was sort of the forerunner of prefab when you stop to think about it. And actually, Rudolph was very interested in prefabrication, and he actually used a lot of modulars built off-site in several of his projects. So yes, actually, I would call it the forerunner of the modulars.
When did you guys start the planning for this? Because this is a big operation.
Yes.
You've got to get it from Sarasota,
right,
truck it out here to California, arrange the permitting, arrange with the city. You don't. Yeah. It was city property it's on, right?
Yeah. No. It's actually on a privately owned.
So you have a property owner to deal with.
Yeah, the Grit Development that's the main developer of the downtown. That's who we were working with.
So how long ago did you start this odyssey?
Actually, I believe it was about May of 2018. Actually, could have been maybe it was more like April. We started talking about it because we had to negotiate all of this with the Sarasota Architectural Foundation, and we have another board member. His name is Stephen Rose, who also had deep connections with the Sarasota Architectural Foundation. And so Stephen actually also carried the ball a great deal in those beginning negotiations along with Nikki McLaughlin. So it was a team effort. And then when it once got here, another board member of ours, Peter Blackburn, who is an architect, he was also there during that whole process of getting the pallets set up and supervising all of that, and was there every day, actually. So we had several people overseeing because we had a tight framework there. So I think we got it here, must have been, if I remember correctly, it was late September, and we still had a few more things to do with permits with the city. So that's what I say. I think we finished it just a few days before
the deadline.
Before the deadline, yeah.
Now, after Modernism Week, when is it going to be open, and how can people see it?
It's open every weekend on Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 4.
10 to 4.
Yeah, every weekend. And then if there's a special event in town, then we're open in addition to that. And we can also do private tours during the week if there's a group of, let's say, 10 or more that would like to have a private showing.
Is there a website for the house here, or some way that people can contact you about these tours?
Yes. Actually, psbotcom.org is our website, and that would be a go-to place as far as the contact would be concerned.
Well, this is a wonderful thing that you're doing, and particularly in sharing this replica of the Walker Guest House with the world. Thank you.
Right, absolutely. It's been fun, very exciting, and we're not finished yet.
Thanks for listening. Want to hang out with U.S. Modernist at Modernism Week in February next year? Send an email to george@usmodernist.org with your name and phone number. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Angela Rowland, your special agent for Modernist houses. 919-995-0550. Okay, take us out, Tom.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 7,000 significant modernist houses, and access 2.5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Cindy Stratton, not her real name, researches guests from her secret underground lair. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back in 2 weeks with another edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.